Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to do the invocation now. Heavenly Father, we're thankful that we're able to gather together in freedom this evening, Lord. I pray that we would all have humble hearts. Lord, we know that you are sovereign and in control of all things, and in your providence have brought all this together for this night, this evening, Lord. Pray it would be a blessing to all here. Lord, most of all, we pray for your honor and glory in all this. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
We're going to be practicing with the mic throughout the evening, so if you can't hear in the back, let us know and we'll make adjustments. My name is Fred Ahmet. I am the chairman of the committee, and we're happy that you're all here tonight to hear what we have to say. Many of us, like many of you, attended the meetings 4 years ago at Northside School, where the planning department hosted a workshop for the residents and landowners of the valley to come out and show what they would like to see for the future of land use planning in the Selle area. And like many of us and many of you, we urged them to keep it rural, to keep it the same as it was, to maintain the agricultural and rural nature of the valley. After those meetings, the Planning Commission checked with the state to see what options might be available in state code that would allow the ideas and interests of all of us that live out here to be presented to the commission. And they chose, from several alternatives, they chose a citizens committee that would be charged with examining the old land use plan and formulating a new one that would be incorporated into the entire Bonner County comprehensive plan. We were seated in April of 2017, and the committee was charged, as I say, with reviewing the existing land use plan and creating an updated formula that would reflect your interests in the Selle area. The makeup of the committee over the first few months evolved, but most of the deliberations were made by the committee that you see in front of you here. We have Susan Fay, Betty Anderson, Brian Wood, Daniel Danovan, Tom Cleveland, John Malloy, Allison Burnett, Diane Wheeler, and Charles Pope. And we met every month for 3 years to review and create this new document. Throughout the 3 years, our first priority was always to accurately represent your interests. One of the first goals that we had was to have a meeting like this where we could bring the results of our efforts to you so you could ask questions and hear what we have decided. This evening's presentation is one of 3 that are required before our plan can be considered and adopted into the overall Bonner County plan. The next step is a public hearing with the Bonner County Planning and Zoning Commission. Don Davis is here this evening. He is the chair of that commission, and it will review our draft at one of their upcoming meetings and make a recommendation to the county commissioners as to whether the draft should be accepted as presented, or if there should be some revisions made, or they could throw it out altogether. That's their prerogative. The next step is for the county commissioners to take the recommendation from the Planning Commission and decide if it should be brought into the overall Bonner County plan. At both of these public hearings, both the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Bonner County Commissioners, public input will be taken. And we hope that all of you will go and make your voices heard at those meetings. I'd like to say just a word about tonight's meeting. This is an informational session. It's for us to present our plan, for you to review it and ask questions. We'd like to answer whatever questions you can. We've asked for you to write them down, because in the interest of time, we'd like to answer as many of them as we can. We're scheduled to be done here at 7:30. So if you write them down, raise your hand, we'll collect them, bring them up, and then when it's time, we'll be answering each of your individual questions. We would like to answer the questions of those residents and landowners of the valley first. So if you put your address on your card, those will be the ones that we answer first, and then as time allows, we'll answer the rest. Again, there's time for public comment at the 2 hearings coming up. They'll be scheduled, and as soon as they are, the times, dates, locations will be made available. So it was an honor to serve on this commission and represent you. Not each, but many of our committee members would like to address certain parts of the plan, and when we're done with that, then we'll start with the questions. So thanks again for coming.
I'm Susan. I'm a member. I applied to be on the committee after the Northside meeting, and I was appointed as an alternate. I became a regular member after one of the standing members was removed by planning and zoning. Up to the time that we finished this report, there has still been one opening left as a third alternate on the committee. So we've always had an opening open to the public for 3.5+ years. After 2.5 years, I was elected record keeper to make sure we kept correct copies of what was voted on by the committees each month. Each page was hand carried after it was voted upon and put in hard copies into planning and zoning under our committee. This is the plan that we came up with for our community. The members, if you want to see, here are the maps. These are the maps that went in and were signed by the committee. Right after the maps comes the signature page, and every one of us signed this page. John Malloy signed no, and Dan Danneman put his exception to page, he put his exception to page 8. The rest of the members and alternates signed in agreement. So these are the signatures. This first part all went in and approved. The next 6 pages are the appendixes. Each one of those pages was voted on by the committee, taken up to planning and zoning, and given a received stamp. And given a received stamp. So this is our official, agreed upon plan, signed by the members and received officially by planning and zoning. This reflects the wishes of the majority of our residents from Northside School and the majority of the committees. We wanted to keep it rural and agricultural. We have tried to be transparent, and we have had all our meetings open to the public. They've been posted throughout the 3.5 years, and so I hope if you miss those meetings that you'll look forward to coming to, there's still, as Fred said, there's still things to be decided, and so our goal, though, was to be transparent and open, and this is our report to you to decide what you think. Thank you.
My name is Betty Anderson, and I've served on the committee from the beginning in April of 2017. Our focus for our plan has always been to keep our valley rural and agriculture and forestry, to protect the infrastructure, preserve its natural beauty and resources for the next generation. Once our rural community is developed, there will be no turning back, and it's going to be gone forever. I just wanted to share a little bit of facts that I got off of the American Farmland website and Ag Weekly. According to a report from American Farmland Trust titled Farms Under Threat, the state of America's farmland, almost 31 million acres were lost to development between 1992 and 2012. That's 175 acres that were lost every hour and 3 acres every minute. And these are numbers from 2012, 8 years ago. If development is to progress at the same rate, you can imagine those numbers are significantly higher now. The trend in terms of urban development, suburban development, ex-urban development, or people getting second homes and moving into forested areas is converting a lot of ag forest land into parking lots, roads, service centers, trails, and high-density developments. It probably comes as no surprise that the expansion of cities and suburbs are responsible for most of the loss in ag and forest lands. However, 41% of the lost acres actually came from development in rural areas. Farmland and rural communities are a critical infrastructure to the Selle Samuels Valley. Similar to roads and bridges, and without farms and forestry, there is not only no food, but there will be no future for the next generation. We need farmland and we need our forests to feed us and sustain our economy, but we also to help restore our planet. So when we look at development and think that it's just affecting our neighbor, it's affecting all of us, and it's affecting the next generation. And I think this plan that we worked on for the last 3 years really addresses that, and I think that it addressed all the concerns that were at the last meeting, the whole reason for this committee. And I was proud to serve on it, and I think we've come up with a really good plan, and now we would like to see it go to the next step.
Thanks, Betty. I'm Brian Wood. I live on Woodside Road in Selle Valley. I also attended the meeting at Northside. We've got a pretty good indication of what most folks wanted. Not a lot of development, pretty much keep it the way it is. And that is pretty much what our plan has addressed. Keeping farmland, keeping acreages in bigger parcels, eliminating small lot subdivision, ADUs. So that is what our plan is catered to keep the valley more like it is. Keep it like it is, without a lot of growth. However, the way it is right now, it's still a 10-acre lot size, and I just ask you to, as you drive around, you look at the 100-acre, the 200-acre, the 40-acre, the 30-acre, the 20-acre parcels that's within our area. It's a big piece of ground. It's a big section, the area that our plan covers is what I mean. If there was a house on every 10 acres, even the way our plan is, it would dramatically affect our whole neighborhood. So that's what we have catered to try to keep it agriculture, try to keep it the way it is. Thank you.
I'm John Malloy. As Susan pointed out on page 12, I am the lone dissenter of this plan. And for that reason, I think that I should expose myself, so to speak, let you know why I'm a dissenter. Earlier on, I wrote up like a 20-page read, or 20-minute read. Obviously, I'm not going to go through that tonight, so I spent most of the day whittling it down to more or less 3 minutes. To stay on task, I will read it. I apologize for that, but I want to maintain what continuity I can with it. So with those apologies, I'll start with a note that says I'm pleased that our subcommittee agreed unanimously to begin each meeting with an invocation, recognizing that our country is founded upon Judeo-Christian ideals and philosophies. But this often presents a moral conflict. But before I digress, we should ask, why do we even have planning and zoning? And the reason is because the state says so. In Code 67-6500, all governing bodies must have a comp plan to guide land use planning and to promote the health, safety, and general welfare while protecting property rights. But what is the proper role of government? Idaho's Constitution states in Section 1, all men have certain inalienable rights, among which are acquiring, possessing, and protecting property. The proper role of government is protecting those rights. Private property rights are generally recognized in the legal profession as a bundle of rights. The right of control, the right of exclusion, the right of enjoyment, and the right of disposition. The committee wants it both ways. On one hand, they cling to the right of exclusion. The committee is clear that it does not want somebody else telling them, us, the committee, that they have to allow a trail through our respective properties or a public easement of any kind through our properties. On the other hand, they willingly stomp on the right of disposition. Maybe not in its entirety, but certainly if you wish to dispose of a portion of your property that is of a size less than the committee's mandated minimum. For instance, if you own and are living on 40 acres in an area zoned for a 10-acre minimum, which is the minimum parcel size proposed in this committee by this committee, and you want to keep a piece, continue to live on the property, and give each of your 4 children equal parcels, you're out of luck. Because the minimum parcel is 10 acres, and if you divide it 5 ways, 40 acres doesn't work. That is a regulatory taking. Some of our deliberations consider that regulatory takings involve government actions which diminish the usefulness or value of private property. Consulting a thesaurus for the verb take, I find 14 offered synonyms, among which are grab, seize, steal, rob, filch, and pilfer. Now, we've acknowledged that our culture is based on Judeo-Christian principles, and one of them is something like, thou shalt not pilfer, or filch, or rob. In fact, it says specifically, thou shalt not steal. Brigham Young University studied the nature of land use takings and found that the question whether a regulatory taking has occurred becomes one of degree. Idaho's Attorney General Lawrence Wasden has ruled that there is no taking unless the degree to which the value has been reduced is 100%. So this means that his court holds that it's okay to steal a little bit, but not okay to steal a lot. And of course that notion is absurd and a threshold that's nearly impossible to meet. Such a ruling, though, allows a planning and zoning subcommittee to fear no legal ramifications for overly burdensome regulations and restrictions, regardless of the moral issues presented.
John?
Yes.
We're at 4 minutes.
So this is what I'm up against, right?
Go ahead.
So, but I think I had 1 or 2 yield their
Go
time.
ahead, finish.
When I practiced this at home, I did it in 3 minutes, but I read really fast. So back to the BYU study. The BYU study says the Supreme Court has stressed that takings inquiry must be factual in nature and therefore must be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. But that's the problem. Planning and zoning tries to make one size fit all. There's been no discussion about tort law, and now I have to hurry, Mr. Chairman, and there's been no discussion about nuisance law, and of course those kinds of questions don't fall within the parameters of this subcommittee and what we've been told what we need to do, what we have to do. The subcommittee wants to maintain rural character, which is admirable and commendable. But when you think about it, and what this proposal amounts to is forcing the neighbors to maintain their pastures and hillsides at a status quo, because that's what was here when we arrived. When a newcomer arrived to the valley, they saw pastures and hillsides that are beautiful, and that's what they want. And they want to force the landowners that own those to maintain them for our enjoyment. Okay, I'm down to the last paragraph. There's some irony in the fact that everything the subcommittee does impacts somebody, yet so much of what it does gives no consideration to whether or not the behavior it is trying to regulate and restrict would actually impact, to a significant degree, anybody. If the purpose is to promote health, safety, and general welfare of the people, then there should be concern about the impact any actions might have on the welfare of the public in general, period. If there's no significant adverse impact, then there should be no action. And if chasing some nebulous notion of a community vision of rural lifestyle means doing unto others what I'd not want done to me, then any doing I'd done would lead to my own philosophical conflict and chronic insomnia. So, because I'm out of time, I'll leave it at that. But my issue, my dissenting, obviously, my vote against this is because it conflicts with my general philosophy of private property rights.
Hi, my name is Diane Wheeler. Both of my grandfathers were loggers in rural California, and my husband and I moved here 22 years ago and to be part of the rural scene. We didn't want to bring California with us. And my father left a lot of great books on the bookshelf for me to read. And one of them talked about the 3 things necessary for a society to succeed. You need mining, manufacturing, and agriculture. And one of the things that I learned during the process here is that in the major comp plan, which I don't know if anyone brought a copy of the comp plan. Is there one here? Okay, it's very thick, and it says that planning and zoning is a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. So that is very important, and property rights is a two-way street. For example, there was a little device put in down the street from me, and now without a public hearing. And because of that, it's going to cost a lot of money legally. And one of our members here said that if you don't agree with something, you should take someone to court. Well, I want to tell you, if you have to take someone to court, you might not win because you might run out of money. I mean, it's not an easy thing. Basic planning and zoning is here for a reason. It's a way to be good neighbors. We did not make changes to the map. The only thing that we did was we said we can't go smaller because the chairman of planning and zoning, Mr. Davis, asked us to do some analysis. And we did the analysis on our water system and how things perk. And we came to the conclusion, it's in our paper, you guys can read it, I urge you to read it. There is no more water, and we are not able to sustain a development. Although we were encouraged to make a development because this is something that we were given over and over again, but we chose not to go that way. I received a letter from one family, and they said, "We, the undersigned, agree with the Selle Samuels Community Area Plan as devised by the Selle Samuels Subcommittee and finalized on February 18th, 2020. In particular, we feel the plan should have precedence over the portion of comprehensive plan devoted to the Selle Samuels area, which is attempting to reduce minimum acreage in an area in order to create higher density population. The comprehensive plan is a direct result of those who wish to make money by subdividing, building homes or villages, by their very existence, which would destroy rural agricultural and peaceful qualities which make the valley a special place that it is. It is the result of thinking based on economics to the exclusion of other attributes. Thus, the Selle Samuels Community Area Plan should be accepted and the area left to attract tourists, not those who would destroy its present nature. Thank you.
My name is Charles Pope, and I retired from the Air Force in '07, and I escaped a place south of here to move into the woods with my 3 kids and my wife, to homeschool our children, to have several acres, just to enjoy the rural life. I mean, what a blessing it is to live in Idaho. I grew up in Michigan. I didn't really like that place down south that I was in, but that's where I retired from the Air Force out of. So praise God, I was able to get out of there. I really don't have anything prepared to say tonight on this topic, because everything's in the comp plan. I mean, we worked hard on this thing. You know, I was telling John tonight, I totally appreciate his perspective and his wisdom, even though he was a dissenter in a lot of things. He brought wisdom to the table, things that I didn't even think about. And I can totally appreciate property rights, owning a chunk of land and being able to do what I want to do with it. I get it. I get that side. And then I get the other side too, that we got greed out there and people that want to blow it up here in this area. And if this is one way to stop it, and that's going to limit me too on my property, then I'm good with that. And so I'm not a big government guy. That's why a lot of us move into the rural areas of North Idaho to get away from that kind of stuff. And I get the argument. I'm just saying you can't ride the fence on this one. You got to go one way or another. And so I chose 10-acre minimums. And I know some people might not be happy with that, but I'm like, okay, the other thing is property rights, freedom, do what you want to do with your property and blow it up into whatever. At some point, you got to draw the line. And if we continue to allow variances and other stuff going on, we're going to lose what most of us moved here for and love about North Idaho. So that's all I have to say. Thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you, committee. If you have a question, Diane will collect your cards. If you don't have a card and have a question, raise your hand and we'll make sure you get the equipment you need to ask them. Our first question is actually several questions, and I'll go through the list and people can address them. A question about limited mineral extraction. That was one of the things that we had listed. We didn't want open pit mine. We didn't want to have large extractions of overburden and so forth. It's more of the necessary gravel pit, rock resource that we were looking for. Anyone else want to talk to them?
Yeah. So there is at least, I believe I counted 6 gravel pits within our area. They are really very important to our community. We can't repair our county roads without these gravel pits. You can't have a good driveway. When they say limited, there's limits of what can and cannot be done. There's laws and regulations, but it's something that we have to have. It employs a lot of people. It's a business that I think we all need and we have to have.
In our plan that says no amnesty, and the question is, what about enforcing that? Someone want to address that? It was in regard to the non-conforming lot sizes that were smaller than were on the original plan. There's there's a lot of small acreages, less than 5 acres, many of them, and we wanted to be sure that those lots were not overdeveloped, and so that's why we had that clause.
Excuse me. Several places in the comp plan.
We'd rather, could you write your question down if we...
Have my question. You
Is
didn't
this it?
That's me.
Okay.
I'm presuming Randy. I don't hear an answer to the amnesty. You've said it 4 or 5 times in this, and no amnesty. How are you going to, why put it in if you're not going to enforce it? And if you don't have a means...
That will be, that sort of thing will have to be done by the planning and zoning folks, and they're the ones that will develop that.
I talked within that. Going back to the minimal mineral extraction, and I agree with Mr. Woods, I use his product a lot. If his pit, if Pete's pit is minimal, I don't want to see a major pit. And this is what I have heartburn over this.
I understand.
You're not explicit enough in what you're submitting. And I've talked to people in the county, and it's like, are they going to run with this? So is 50,000 cubic yards a day minimal? And is there...
That'll have to be, yeah. We weren't in a position to define that. It'll have to be defined. There's code that is used, that can be done with that too.
As far as policing goes, one of the problems with the Title 12 changes, as I understand it, is that the director of police is the same person that decides if it's going to be police, the same person that decides that it's okay or not okay also polices the thing, which is something that the community really needs to think about. We can't solve it here tonight, but all of you, I welcome you to be involved in the Title 12 changes. I wrote an article about the road to Ada County because the county is continuing to go through Title 12 changes, and it's basically making it very difficult to have that counterbalance, like you say. It doesn't seem that there's any policing going on.
The next question, there's several questions here regarding lot size. Why is it 20 down to 10? What about 5-acre lots and so forth? We did not change the size of the lots on the plan that exists now. Our plan says that there cannot be any new lots that are less than 10 acres. That you can't split anything down to a lot size less than 10 acres if it exists as a 10-acre lot now. There are areas on the map that are 20-acre minimums, and those would stay at 20. Our plan does not preclude a landowner making a request for a variance. So if you would like to split your land, then you can request that. Our plan is designed, or hopefully will give the commission a tool that will help determine whether or not those variances are legitimate and should be granted. Right now, the existing plan has a 5 or 10 acre minimum. So your 10 acre minimums that you're looking at, most of them are also 5. It could be either 10 or 5. We took out that option. If it's a 10 acre lot now, it should remain a 10 acre lot. What else we got here? Okay. There's a question about the cell tower policy. That's beyond our purview, except that we, in our appendices, have stated that we did not want to have any cell tower 5G installation within 5 miles of a home. That was our recommendation for that.
How practical is that?
I'm sorry?
How practical is that?
I don't, how practical? That's our recommendation as what we see as a problem with those sorts of installations. Now, whether that's something that the commission can decide, they've already made a decision, obviously, on how that should fit. Is there anybody, if anybody else would like to add anything, please wave.
I'll just speak to one issue as far as the 5G thing goes. Some of you may be aware of, and some may not be aware of, but there's people that have moved in this area specifically for the reason to try to get away from Wi-Fi, cell towers, 5G, all that kind of stuff, because it has health effects, bad health effects. Whether we want to ignore it or not, whether we want to say the FDA says it's okay or the FCC says it's all good, cell phones are good, they're not harmful. If we want to ignore that, that's fine. We can do that. You know, you can look at lots of different studies, different things like brain cancer that's gone up dramatically over the past few decades with cell phone usage. Even your cell phones, when you get them, it says on the very back page of the thing, keep it 6 inches away or more from your head. I don't know, there's just a lot of stuff out there, and people can say, you know, poo-poo that, I don't believe it. Well, I'm just saying that there's a lot of people that moved up here to get away from that kind of stuff. And if you want that kind of stuff, then you can move into Sandpoint or somewhere else that's putting those cell towers up everywhere. But we decided it was important enough that we build it into our plan. So agree with it, disagree with it. That's just a little bit of background on it. And I like technology just like anybody else. I've got a cell phone, I like them. But I realize that there's some bad health effects from it. Charles Pope's point of view, and I'm not alone. So that's just a little perspective.
Are there any provisions you think the commissioners will not support or approve? And if so, which ones? During our meetings, we worked with the staff from the planning and zoning, or the planning department. And they were there at every meeting, and we would often ask, are we doing the right thing? Are we putting the language in that will reflect our intent? Or is what we're doing going to be enforceable? Is this going to result in what we hope will reflect the interests of the community as we understand it? So we tried to steer away from language that was, I know that it may not be as precise as you like, or it may not seem to be as enforceable as you would like, but we worked with the staff to come up with language and parts of the elements that would be acceptable. So I don't know what the commission will do, but we worked hard to make sure that our intent was included in our plan in a way that should be or would be defendable according to the staff. We'll have to make this same presentation to the Planning Commission, and again, that'll be a chance for you then to ask the questions that they would be able to answer better than we. They're the ones that will be the enforcers of the code. That's one of the questions. Who is going to make sure that the planning document is enforced? That's the Planning Commission. So the time to ask those questions would be when the Planning Commission is having their review. What do you think, let's see, thinking about our valley and what it will look like 100 years from now, when our great-grandchildren are here? How much did we think about that? Well, most of us here have grandchildren, so we appreciate the thought. And our grandchildren, many of them, want to come back to this place. This is a magnet place. And the reason they come back is because of what we've enjoyed while they were growing up. So we wanted to maintain that. Yes, we did think of how it would look in 100 years. And that's an important part of why we made the decisions we did. But we have to also recognize that every 5 years this plan is reviewed and changes can be made in it. So it's important that we remain diligent and vigilant in making sure that our intent, if it stays the same, is reflected in the changes that will be made every time the plan is reviewed.
I think that's a good question. Someone mentioned that they came from another place. Well, I did too, and I'm very thankful I did. I moved to the southern part of the state 40 years ago, and I was living in the rural area of the state, rural agriculture. I moved to the county, so it was county services, and I had 4 children, and it was just open fields, open range, open, you could ride your horses, you could do whatever. By the time I left there was no grass, no range, no horses. It was cement, housing developments, shopping centers, malls. When I moved to my town, there were no stoplights. I know I'm not that old, but I moved to a town where there were no stoplights. By the time I left, there were 15. And there were roads, more industrial development, more development. And so when you say, do we think about our children? My children couldn't afford to live in the town where they were born because of the development. They brought in more government services, more mayors, more city council, more everything. And they couldn't even afford to live there. And so I moved here because they pushed me out of my own home. So when you say, are we thinking about our grandchildren? We are thinking about our grandchildren. I'm going to be a great-grandmother in January. And my grandchild is going to have to move out of that state because their parents are not going to be able to afford to live there. So yes, I was thinking about it. That's why I moved here. I love Idaho. And I love the openness, the ruralness. The people are the most amazing people. And it's because we care and we're outside and we're rural and agricultural. And I would hate to see it covered in rooftops.
Here's a question I hope someone out there can answer. How do young families afford large acreage parcels? Why not stick to 5-acre parcels? It doesn't make any difference really how big the parcel is. It's getting more expensive all the time, and there's a lot of folks that can't afford 5-acre parcels. That's not planning and zoning's issue. It may be a result, but that's not the way they do business. We want to maintain the 10-acre parcel because that's what will maintain the water and the septic in the valley. It's also what maintains the valley and the rural atmosphere that it's got. And I'm sorry I've got kids that can't afford to buy parcels here either. But if we don't maintain the size of the parcel available, then the valley becomes a place where nobody or many of us wouldn't want to live anyway. That's why we chose the 10-acre parcel as the minimum size, but we'll maintain those small lots as they are set up right now.
One function of the 10-acre minimums and then the 20 where those are, land prices will increase. When you restrict the amount of it that's available, what's available becomes more valuable. So prices will go up more than they would have if there were smaller sizes available.
I disagree. One of the things that I want all of you to think about is we're tapped out for water, and the big issue is this. Should we decide to develop the Selle Valley? Should we put in hundreds of 5-acre parcels like some people would like? Would you like to pay for all the water and the sewer and all the things that are going to be required? You're going to have to build a new school. I think the people that are homesteading and farming may be priced out of their home and farm. And I think that's something to be considered. Agriculture is necessary, and if we don't value it, we won't have it, and we'll be more dependent. And I think if we didn't learn anything from what just happened in the world, we can't be dependent on things far away. We need to be more dependent on each other. And I'm really happy to see more little farm stands growing up and things happening. And I see acreages that weren't being used, they're now being used, and everyone has a garden now. So good things have happened, and we don't need to be dependent on far away. We need to be dependent closer if we can. And I'm hoping that it'll go that way.
Well, since the mic ended up here, I will say that I think planning and zoning, or zoning and limiting lot sizes to large parcels drives up the cost. So whoever asked about our grandkids, you know, your grandkids are not going to be able to afford to come back here. So, and the minimum lot size, as I described earlier, won't allow you to divide your parcels into a lot size that might make it affordable. So, and the idea that because a document says, see, how do I say this? There are already like a bazillion 5-acre parcels out there, right? But there's not a bazillion homes on it. So the market will decide when a home goes on those 5 acres, not planning and zoning, if I'm making any sense. But I don't know that I can address that. I think we need to refer to the chairman to address. We have someone who wants to speak from the
Are we
audience.
done with our questions? Do you have one more question?
Well, you want to sit down, you want to read it first and see if you can. Take a look at it before you start.
Okay, Matt, here you go. You say the lots that are proposed to be designated transitional include woods crushing, hauling, concrete, and asphalt plant. Well, you're wrong. That has been zoned industrial for the last 25 years. You're totally off the wall on that one. You have said that our Woodside Road pit and shop. You're wrong when you say pit. Pit is not included. However, we did include the shop. And the reason we did that was we actually, it says transitional, more industrial. We've done that actually to get it more in compliance to what it actually is. Then you say the May Pit. It's by the Bonner County landfill. You also mentioned the old Cedar Pine site. I believe the old Cedar Pine site has been zoned industrial. If there's not a site in the country that could be an industrial site, it's the old Cedar Pine mill. That's my opinion. There are 2 other properties in the Selle Valley that meet the same criteria, but they're not included in the same designation. You're more than welcome to try to get that in this designation. You have the May Pit site by the Bonner County landfill. There again, that piece of ground adjoins the county transfer station. It is a 40-acre site. At one point in time, it was, in fact, part of the county landfill. If there's not a site in this county that could support some commercial or industrial activities, that's a good one for it. So, there you go, Matt.
Thanks, Brian.
So the question, addressing the issue of our children not being able to afford to buy the larger parcels of land, rural living family farms used to cut out a piece of ground for their kids. How does this practice fit in with this plan? Does anyone want to take that? I'll start. I have 8 kids. I have 25 acres. I can't legitimately give a piece of my property to each of my children. I recognize that. That wouldn't be right. We, as a committee, decided that 10 acres, and this goes to another question as well, 10 acres, given the size of the lots that are now available or still existing in our area of planning, needs to be 10 acres is the minimum to keep the rural aspect and the water and the septic aspects in a state of balance. So I appreciate that if you have a piece of ground and children, and you want to have them get part of your property, it's not possible for every child to get a piece of property now because the land won't support it. Again, this plan does not preclude a variance. If you wanted to bring a variance to the commission and have them review your request, that's entirely, we don't say that that's not possible. We're saying that the 10-acre minimum is what is required to maintain water, septic, and the rural atmosphere of the valley. John, did you have something?
Betty.
You have to remember that in dividing up all this land, we're destroying the infrastructure. And you can't just keep asking the land to keep giving and not give back. You can't keep dividing, and expect the land to give anything back. Eventually, you're going to have nothing. You're going to have nothing here but houses and cement and shopping and trails, and there goes all your agriculture, your forestry. Where are you going to get your toilet paper? Where are you going to get your food? You have to think about that. And there has to come a time we have to be responsible. We have to each be responsible for our actions and what we do with our land. And all we're trying to do is protect that in this valley. If you want to live on an acre, go to town and buy an acre, or go somewhere where you can live on an acre. But in a rural agriculture area, that's not possible, and it shouldn't be possible. And it's not our responsibility to make it possible.
So you don't have to drive very far from right here. In an hour, you can be in Coeur d'Alene, Rathburn Prairie, Hayden. That's what Susan said. The small town with no traffic lights, and now it has 16. I'll bet that area has 100. And it hasn't been that long, but just in the last 2 years. Just go drive through that area and take a look at what is happening, what is going on, and ask yourself if that's what you want here. I, for one, do not.
So the family farm that cannot now divide a parcel off to give to their kids, you're out of luck. That's a regulatory taking. Your property rights have been trampled. And so whoever asked that question I mean, that's the answer. And the idea that if we divide, people are going to come and not pay for themselves, I think that's a little bit absurd too. The new people that come in don't get to come in and live for free. They have to pay their way. I mean, they pay taxes like anybody else. So, and the idea, where does rural start and urban stop? I mean, is it 1 acre? Is it a ½ acre? Is it 5 acres? I don't know. But if this area was going to get stampeded by people who wanted to live on small parcels, it would have been done already. There are lots of small parcels out there, as I understand it, and they're not all built out. So the market will dictate, and the water issue, the market will dictate that too. If there's not water here, whatever that means, if there's not sufficient water, then why would someone build here? I mean, the market, people are, I think, smarter than that. But the idea that government or a subcommittee can control things better than the market, I think, is a bit arrogant, and I don't like that idea.
I think it's important to note that not all of your children are going to want to live on your property. I have 4 children, and 2 of them live in the state over the border. And they cross the border to see us because they have jobs there. And not everyone, I think it's really important that everyone has a conversation with how you want to dispose of your land, because some of your children would want it and the others would not. But mostly what happens in divisions is it gets sold and chopped up into little bitty pieces, and it doesn't necessarily go to the kids. So that's kind of a red herring sometimes, not always.
I want to thank each of you on the committee for the time that you put in, but I also would like to say that I think the family farm is a thing almost of the past, which is very, very sad. One of my neighbors, her son came out of, retired from the service. He is going around to all of us looking for acreage to farm. And there just isn't enough up here. So I understand how and why you're concerned about that. But I'm a Californian, I hate to say, and I came up here 20 years ago with my husband because we couldn't stand keeping up with the Joneses. And I don't want to see that up here. I told my husband, let me take you to Coeur d'Alene, where I grew up. Let me show you Spokane, where it all is. So we ended up driving to Canada because it wasn't too far from Coeur d'Alene. And Coeur d'Alene had changed. And it's gotten worse even now in the 20 years. All I'm trying to say is, we love it up here, but I think that if you don't even go to 5 acres, there is 41% of this property in this valley area up here is under 5 acres already. And people are going to come, you're going to be paying more, we're all going to be paying more money for the water development and the sewer. It's all going to come eventually. Because if you can't put in a septic, they're not going to build. They're not going to let you sell your property. I think you've taken on more than you needed to. I think you guys tried to cover every little area, and I just wanted to thank you for that. But I also want to say, if you just stick with 10 acres, there's people that are going to come out from Washington everywhere. They think they can take care of 10 acres. It is a lot of work to take care of 10 acres. And by the time they go buy a big old tractor or whatever, it's ridiculous. So I think 5 acres is manageable. You talked about junkyards in your paperwork. You can have a bunch of junkyards on 10 acres, because people cannot maintain it. I've seen it in California, where my husband was a big developer. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. That's why we're up here. So I think I'd like to see it go to 5 acres.
running down to, we've got a few more minutes, so go ahead.
I've got a couple of comments. Number one, on the property value thing, everybody's concerned about the property value of 10 acres. Let me tell you something. If you're coming from California or Western Washington, you can sell an 8-acre lot with a house on it, and you can afford 3 places over here. Property values being what they are, so don't get lost in that argument. I've seen Southern California, it used to be Orange County, now it used to be strawberry fields, nothing but houses and condominiums. The Duwamish Valley, the Kent Valley, the Oregon Valley in Western Washington 30 years ago, when I first moved over there, it was all farms. You can't find it anymore. It's warehouses, condominium complexes, and massive developments. You can't see the damn mountains because of the house in front of you. You want that here? No. That's what you're going to get, because what happens is, once the camel's nose gets under the tent, well, we'll allow 5 acres. Well, we'll allow 1 acre. Well, pretty soon somebody's going to say, well, what about a 1/4 acre? I want a variance. Pretty soon, right along your property lines, you're going to have a 1-story house. There's going to be a 3-story house right in front of you, and you won't be able to see Schweitzer. That's what's going to happen. Then they're going to bring in a limited utility district and say, oh, you're all having to become part of the sewer. And we need water, so you're going to end up paying about $500 a month. Crap you didn't need, you didn't want. And you're going to end up being governed and then being run over by a city. That's what will happen. It happened it took 30 years to destroy the entire area around Seattle and south and all the way down towards Oregon and Puyallup. It took about the same amount of time to destroy Orange County. You want that to happen here? No. 30 years from now, that'll be what this county looks like if we keep it up.
That's right.
Good evening. My name's Dan Rose. I came in agreeing or sympathizing with Mr. Malloy's comments of the property rights. And through some of the discussion, I'm kind of getting some second guessing on that. I see the water rights and the septic as being the 2 major functions we need to drill down on. And I don't know if the committee has reviewed the water table level, the septic, and the amount of drainage down to the water, to where it starts to contaminate the water. I know the valley area, I don't know the depth of the wells are in the valley. I live on a ridge, so I'm about 100 feet up. But the comment about when water will affect the turnover of the property rights. If I bought the lot that I have expecting 5 gallons of water, and others move in, and now I get 2 gallons or 1 gallon of water, I didn't bargain for that when I bought my property. And that's the problem with the comment that you just made. And it's the hole that I'm starting to see now between water, septic, infrastructure coming, build up, paying for it, and keeping what we have, but still maintaining the ability to go down to a lower level. So I'm not sure if Mr. Malloy or anyone else can say that at 5 or 2 acres, we're going to end up going towards a paved infrastructure for water, sewer, or whatever. If we know what that acreage is, based on the hard number, I know you get given a 10-acre estimate, and a lot are at 5 acres now, but is there a number where it is just unsustainable? And is that based on some type of analysis that we got to that point?
The Panhandle Health District spoke to the problems with septic. And it's the water associations that said that they could no longer provide new hookups to the water systems. The wells, everybody here knows that there are good wells and there are bad wells, and it's a gamble. And whether you have to go down 80 feet or 1,800 feet, it's something you can't say. So we based our decision in terms of septic from the Panhandle Health District that said finding a place that perks can be as
much a gamble as finding a well that produces 40 gallons a minute. And they said that the smaller the lots, the more likely you'll have problems with finding septic and perk. So that was our basis for that. And the water associations saying that they could not hook up any more customers on their systems makes it imperative that everybody has a well. And wells are, as you said, the chance of your neighbor, if it becomes a smaller and smaller lot, affecting your water supply is a real issue. So those were we can't say that 2 acres is going to be right or 10 acres is not enough. But we do know that we don't have any more ground to work with. So we better protect what we have so that we can then make decisions as we learn more. So that was our issue. Was there something you wanted to say? That's all.
I could just add that my husband is on the water board for the Odin Water Association, and there's only so many hookups left, and those hookups are just in various places in the valley. You can't just say I want a water hookup and you live in a certain area and you say, well, I live in Selle Valley and want a water hookup. It has to be in a particular area. So because they're so limited with their ability to just give water to anybody anywhere in the valley. Also, we have to take into consideration a very expensive system that we had to put in just to get the water out of the lake, because the lake is so shallow and so full of silt that you have to go way, way, way out there, and then you have to have all type of filter systems, and then they lower the water, and when they lower the water, that silt and everything comes in, and you end up with an issue trying to get water a lot of times in the wintertime. So the water is a big issue. And then the Colburn water is even in a worse situation than we are. They're maxed out. There is no more water in the Colburn area. And I heard the one woman say, well, or John or somebody, well, people quit coming in, quit building because there's no water. Well, they haven't. They go up there and there's all types of illegal water users who are hooked up to the Colburn water that have not even bought hookups, but they're hooking up to the family water system. And it's not right. They're draining the water for all the people who have paid for their water and expect to get water, and now there's no water for anybody. And they lose their water every year. It dries up. I see truck after truck come into the fairgrounds and fill up huge tanks of water, and I'm assuming because they can't get water wherever they are. And they go to the fairgrounds and fill up their tanks there for water. So water is a huge issue, and drilling wells is becoming even more of an issue, and people not being able to find water just in the wells. Our aquifer is going to be taxed. It's the infrastructure of our valley is at stake. You cannot keep asking the land to keep giving you what you want. You have to have limits. And having rights, so having rights doesn't mean you have the right to do anything you want. It means you have the right to do what you want as long as you're not infringing on somebody else's right. So if me taking all your water and I haven't paid for it, I'm infringing on your rights because you paid for your water. And now I'm taking it. So rights don't mean anything if that's the way you're going to throw around rights.
My name is John Skinner. I'm a large property owner. In regards to the 10-acre minimum that you're talking about, I would be happy with that. But I have a fairly large property, and I'm in 20, which that's where the county put me. But that's my problem in the county, and I don't want a group to dictate what me or my children or my children's children can cut that acreage up to other than agree with what my neighbors are cutting it up to. If everybody's in 10, which looks like most of the Valley is in 10s, designated 10s. There's some very large properties that are not. Something like 260, 300-acre parcels, but they're designated in the 10-acre colorization. And I understand that's good. planning and zoning, what their ultimate plan was, but I would prefer to have my right to be able to cut my property into tens when the time needs to be, if I want to. I'm not a developer, I don't want to develop my property, but I don't want my rights taken away when my neighbors have rights more than I do.
And as I said, the plan that, or the draft that we have doesn't preclude you asking for the variance. And if you bring it in and present it, oftentimes it's given. We don't do that. What we did was identify those areas that were large and could sustain a 20-acre minimum lot. And there are areas there that, because of the surrounding lots and so forth, are 10s, even though they may be larger spots. But you have, with this draft, you still have the ability to go in and ask for the variance and make your pitch to the commission.
I understand that, but
I think we understand each other.
I do, but my problem is there's a lot of large farmers like myself that have 100-acre, 200-acre parcels and more. The point is, I mean, they're farmers, and now they're designated, they're getting up in age, they want to cut their properties up to their children, but sometimes those children don't want the property. And that farmer might be in need of finances to where he wants to cut off a 10 to sell it and keep the farm whole. So I see this as a problem, taking away the rights of these large ranchers like myself, that everybody else has the right to cut theirs out. I mean, there's a lot of parcels that I look on this list farther up north that are greater than 100 acres, 200, 300-acre parcels, and they're designated in the 5-acre range.
Yeah.
When it comes to the 10 and 20 acre designations, we did not actually change that from the previous comp plan and the zoning, the land use and the zoning. So those 10 and 20 acres were set down more than 12 years ago. The only thing we changed is with the size was we eliminated the 5 acre. So there's really, the only thing you can do is argue before the Planning and Zoning Commission that you feel that you should be in a different land use designation than you're currently mapped at. This really isn't the venue to address that.
But if you guys are going to present something in regard to the plan to say, this is what we in the Valley want, that's infringing on my rights, which I understand, I think county commissioners.
One more.
Everybody up there except you, John, has stated that their stopping point is 10 acres. Where's your stopping point? Is it 1 acre? Is it 10,000 square foot lot?
I don't think, the idea that I have to go to some government entity and ask them what I can do with my property is repugnant to me. So I don't have a minimum, I haven't even thought about it. But why should any of you have to come to a committee like ours or the county commissioners and ask them, pretty please, can I do this with my property? We say as a community we need to protect what we have. Well, the community, how does the community have it? The community doesn't have it, the individual owners have it. And the individual owners ought to be able to do it within reason. I mean, that's always been the case since the country has existed. Property rights, my property rights don't exceed your property rights. I can't do something, it's the golden rule. Don't do to someone else what you don't want done to you. I can't infringe upon your rights, and you can't infringe upon mine. But we should be able to exercise our private property rights without infringing on others, that's all. So I don't have an answer for you.
Okay,
I don't think that it makes sense to have 100 houses on 10 acres in the middle of the Selle Valley, but I don't think that the marketplace will support it anyway.
Well, I want to thank you for coming. We've worked hard, as we've said, and we're hoping that this draft will be a tool that the commission can use to help us preserve what we've got in the valley. I'd urge you all to to come to the meetings of the Planning Commission and the county commissioners when they review this plan. We don't have a date or a time yet, so you have to pay attention. We'll have information, or maybe we do.
Well, yeah, wow. First off, welcome to planning, and I won't say 101, this is 301. You guys are all well past 101, and they're way past it, because as these folks started out, 3+ years ago, the common comment that any of them would make is, maybe except for John, but we don't know anything about planning. This is all new language to us, let alone the thoughts, but yet it's part of what we are. And the other little thing I always try to say in these kind of meetings is, the comprehensive plan for Bonner County is all of our plan. And if you want a piece of it, then this is how you get involved. So, anyway. As far as moving forward, when the Planning and Zoning Commission formed these committees around the county, and there's 5 of them, we did that on the basis of the state code under the Land Use Planning Act that says that the Planning and Zoning Commission, in order to update the comprehensive plan, can hire consultants, can hire engineers, can hire specialists, and can form neighborhood committees or community committees. We thought, oh, that sounds really good, because even though the Planning and Zoning Commission is made up of volunteers from each of the 3 commissioner districts, so there's 2 of us from each one, and then there's a 7th person. 2 people from Selle, from this area, from District 2, live here. 2 people, we thought that wasn't quite adequate to really get the sense of what's going on. The other part is that state code, when it talks about the comprehensive plan, all of the components, all the 17 or so components that are there, require an analysis of existing past and maybe looking at the future. What does it mean? What do you see when you talk about schools? What do you see when you talk about transportation? What's out there? What's it doing? Is it good or bad? And as you heard tonight, services are a big, huge component of the comprehensive plan and of land use. If the land can't support it, then you try to figure out how to rein that in, how to make it so that it can. It's not going to, because collectively, yeah, nobody wants to see when they moved in and had that 10-gallon-a-minute well, good water, go dry twice in the summer. It's because everybody else is tapping into that. And there is no absolute known aquifer up here. It's groundwater source and so forth. So, not like down in Rathman Prairie. Anyway, moving forward, the next thing is the Planning and Zoning Commission has to consider what these folks have done in this report. And in order to do that in a forum that we use, which is the county administration building, that meeting room on the 1st floor, the whole month of October that's taken up by voting, by elections. So we can't use it. So our alternate meeting there is up in the 3rd floor in this little room that's about like this. So can't have a crowd there. So the first available date for that, looking on the county's calendars, is November 5th? 10th, November 10th. And that would be in the 1st floor conference room at the county administration building. And that will be for the Planning and Zoning Commission to hear from this group and talk about the report. That'll be in the form of a public workshop. So the public is invited, and I'm the chair right now, but I won't be then. We change in October. So we'll see how it goes as far as I would be an advocate for having public testimony at that meeting. I think the testimony tonight has been fabulous. You folks have, hopefully you've all had a chance to look at this document, read it through, think about it. How does it apply to my land? How does it apply to my neighbors? How does it apply to our area? What's it going to do for our communities? And that's what we need to find out. But with facts and figures behind it, so that if anybody comes in and says, well, I want to do this, and the answer is no, or initially that they can't take it all the way to the court, and the court says, well, you didn't have any reasons why you want to keep it this way, so sorry, we're going to give it to you. So that's the problem. Anyway, so November 5th, after that, the commission will decide what to do with the document. It might be massage it might be put in a recommendation onto the commissioners that we think this should be the land use plan for the Selle Samuels area. The 10th, excuse me. November 10th, November 10th. I keep saying the 5th. And so we'll do that. And then the commissioners, the Board of County Commissioners will take it up as an amendment to the comprehensive plan. Because they're the only ones who can pass an ordinance, which is what it takes to amend the comprehensive plan. Following all that, then the second step behind that is, okay, with a change in the comprehensive plan, if there's substantial changes that look like the zoning code and other affiliated codes need to be changed, then the planning department takes that up, brings those changes to planning and zoning. We look at them and make a recommendation again to the Board of County Commissioners. So it's a stepped process. So those questions about policing, anything that would be done in this mode, all that comes through later steps. But this is the ground floor, this is the basics, this is the fundamental stuff. You know, it's land use designations, not zoning. So, all right. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. This is great.
Thanks again. I'm sure some of us will stay around if you have questions.